Come on, bitch, let's go. Come on, get ready, bitches. You haven't seen nothing yet. Come on.
Valentino, Versace, Lamborghini, Bugatti. I got money to burn. I'm single and I'm naughty.
Come on.
Tiffany's, Cartier, Gucci on Marty.
Come on.
Break out your black card, boys. It's time to party.
Hi, you guys. Oh my gosh, so much tea spilled. This could easily be a 2-hour episode, sadly. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put time codes, which I never do, in the description of this audio. So you guys can jump around to the different topics and maybe listen to it a little bit over time, because I like to tell full stories, you know this, and I don't like to do the little sound clippy thing where you get like a glimpse into what's really going on. You know, I like to go deep so we really understand things. I think that pays off in the end. So I am going to put together this monster. I have so much to share with you. I want to talk about producer Patrick, who he's a scandalous mofo. He dropped all this tea from Thailand with his porn lover boyfriend, and he had so much to say, very protective of Kyle Richards and Garcelle Beauvais and his tea drop. I want to play the full soundbite for you today. I also want to tell you a little bit about a scandal which I covered in depth in my confessional videos, which is why I thought what he said was really compelling, but I take what he says with a grain of salt because of a few things I'm going to tell you about in today's show. I also was blown away by 60 Minutes Australia that did an interview with David Beckham's assistant that he had an affair with. I don't know, it was like 10 or 15 years ago now. You might remember they did a docuseries about the Beckhams, and it did come up and they alluded to her. Now, I did a deep dive of their hookup story, and I was totally believing it happened based on my dive. And then I hear in this thing, which I'm going to play for you today, a clip confirming to me once and for all, above and beyond my dive I did, that he really did cheat on Victoria Beckham. So I'm going to play that for you today to consider how you feel about it, because he seemed like he was pretty much acting like a player on Victoria Beckham while she was back in London and he was doing his soccer in Spain. And the assistant may have just been one person that, he was fooling around with. Now, I also got sent some Real Housewives of Beverly Hills exclusive gossip, which I'm going to share on today's show, and Real Housewives of New Jersey gossip. I don't know what happened, but it was like the dams opened, and maybe it was that I hadn't checked my DM email, etc. for a while. And then I was like, oh my God, it's like a treasure trove in here since I got back from Ireland. So I'm going to share that all from you. And I did spend a lot of phone calls this week catching up with people to get the tea from people that I trust deeply in these environments. Now, I did want to say one other thing. I spoke to the account that discovered the Bronwyn criminal background drop that we covered on the bonus audio on Tuesday, and I got more information about everything directly from her. And I hope to continue communicating with her to get more data. Now, she sent me the show that she did also, and I haven't had a chance to listen to that show yet. And so I'm going to listen to it. And then next week, I'll let you know if there's anything additional I want to include on that to do with Bronwyn's Newport scandal that just erupted. But I did ask her a few things, which were specific questions I wanted to ask, and she answered them. So I want to tell you what she said. So let's quickly touch upon the Bronwyn Newport scandal of her having criminal charges related to, identity theft and grand theft, 3 different charges related to that, and then rumors of forgery in Utah, most of which happen while she's with Todd Bradley, oddly, and should be loaded and not needing to do this sort of thing, but there it is. And I asked some questions, and I got a response. So here's what the response was. I wrote, great job, redacted. Awesome sleuthing. Lisa Barlow hinted at some of the stuff you found in January 2025. And I was wondering what triggered you to look for this. Did what she say inspire you? That was me kind of being coy. Like, did Lisa maybe turn you on to this? And then I wrote, also, are there any receipts from her Utah stuff or forgery? I know the San Francisco criminal charges were sealed. Do you think it got expunged? What's your theory on what happened that caused the charges? I'll also check out your show. Thank you so much in advance. And then she responded, hi, thanks so much for your response. No, this all arose from her lying and dying and all the lies about the necklace at the reunion. I remembered she kept posting about this gorilla. She was a naming donor at Hogle Zoo in Utah. The zoo named her as a naming donor right away. No one would suspect someone would stiff a nonprofit on a pledged donation. And then I noticed the zoo dropped her from its annual report while still listing other naming donors. I posted asking if she actually paid them and tagged them, and it blew up on Reddit. And I was later informed she paid them only after my post got around. Wow. Because she's like a pathological liar. She posted that she donated last year when she actually only paid after I called her out about it in February of 2025. Look at the language she used in her TikTok post from October. Legalese mumbo jumbo that would technically be true even if she hadn't paid them. And I do sense she's clever with wording, so I agree with this statement. And then she goes on and says, and then I just started digging. Spokeo was the first website I found stuff on. There were additional details on other sites that helped fill in the blanks. She's been a busy lady. I love this woman who's doing this sleuthing. She's awesome. Shout out. Let me get her account. Where is her account? At Bravo Derm. She's behind this. Okay. She's a freaking rock star at this. You hired, lady. You hired. All right. By the way, I've heard from people on the ground in Utah that one of the reasons a lot of people stay a little bit distant from Bronwyn is they sense she lies about really dumb things and they don't know why. And it makes them like triggered that maybe she's kind of a whack job. All right. So anyway, she'd also posted, I think around 2020, about how she regrets decisions she made while working in finance. She was an executive assistant, but always makes herself sound like she was doing actual finance work. That is so true. Oh my God. And creepily said she had to make restitution. That was before the 2021 charges. So I'm wondering if she like got caught, fired, and had to pay them back in late 2010. And they found more stuff she had done that they hadn't discovered at the time and pressed charges. Also, I suspect she has a well-oiled machine in operation to control the narrative about her and to minimize negative press. It's particularly evident on Reddit. Some of us think she herself is a moderator for Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. Imagine. Oh my God. Imagine. Negative posts about her on that subreddit get taken down, and users like myself who post about things like GorillaGate get permanently banned. But they allow the same MKend of commentary about Barlow, and it doesn't get removed. I suspect she has bots that aggressively downvote critical commentary about her on other Reddit subs. Imagine if it's this incredibly integrate. I do know she has a huge team that she pays on her publicity side, like way above the other women. It happens within minutes, which doesn't feel organic. They've since come after me, have tried to dox me, threaten lawsuits. It's wild stuff. Check out the Reddit user 118's post comment history. I suspect she may be Bronwyn's fixer on there. She pops up like a cold sore to shut down anything negative regarding Bronwyn and try to intimidate people into not speaking openly about her. She also likes reaching out to moderators of other subs so that they limit publication of accurate, objective, publicly available data like this. This is one batch of receipts attached. I'll send more in another response due to size. She scrubbed a lot of these websites like Spokeo and Truth Finder since I started posting everything under #Conwyn Fraudport hashtag on Twitter X. Best. Oh God, love this. Okay, so then she sends me receipts. And it says, the first one, it looks like Bronwyn has been lying about working in trading. According to the FEC, Bronwyn was working as an executive assistant. And then she shows a receipt of this. Wow. Okay. And then she sends me the receipt. Oh, we're definitely posting this in the Patreon. New animals. And then it's got the like zoo data that she relied on, showing that there were problems with the zoo donation. Wow. And then she sends me the Utah Spokio court report for Bronwyn, Newport. It says Utah County. It's as of February 6, 2025. It says county court details account 1, forgery, specify, offense description, forgery. And then it has county court details account 2, Bronwyn, and it says not specified, and there's some unknown charge of some sort, but we don't know what it is, okay? And then there's some other thing from Contra Costa County, unknown. Yeah, wow. There's another one from April 18, 2005. This one is about the forgery one in Utah, and it says wrongful appropriation. Okay, wrongful appropriation. And then there's something else from Contra Costa County Municipal Court, California. So, wow. I mean, this lady's busy. Get Monica Garcia on the phone right now. I'm going to call her because this is too much. Why is Bronwyn on the show and Monica isn't? This is nuts. I'm going to definitely call Monica. This is too much. All right, we'll leave this here till next week. I'll follow up on this, okay? I'm posting these in the Patreon. All right, so let me finish up my intro. Geez, I got so sidetracked there. Finally, I'm going to be covering the Baldwins in episode 6, and I'm going to continue my investigation on hints on the show that he had a marital contract that his quote-unquote stalker alleged with Hilaria Baldwin, and also recap it. And some of you guys wanted to know, is there going to be a season 2? Is it true Alec Baldwin has stopped filming the show with Hilaria? The answer to that question is quite simply that Alec Baldwin has announced that he is negotiating a better contract for him and his family and his kids. He made a joke about it, that the kids wanted more money, but what he really is saying is that, the season must have been somewhat successful for TLC and HBO Max, so he's trying to get more money for the show. I mean, she's executive producer of the show, Hilaria Baldwin, so what they're trying to do now is move it off the sensationalization of the Rust murder trial, which Alec Baldwin was acquitted on, and we are really watching his reaction to that trauma and the backlash by everybody against him, and then trying to be a family man, and then of course the introduction to their relationship with, between him and Hilaria. And also this week, Ireland makes an appearance, his daughter from Kim Basinger, and they're migrating it over to a family show like some of the popular ones, Table for 12, 19 Kids and Counting, and similar shows like that, where you get to watch a mom and dad navigate, having some ridiculous number of kids. And you can see the show going off in that direction a little bit now. As far as season 2 is concerned, though, it hasn't been greenlit, so they're just negotiating it now. So we'll see how it goes. So loads to discuss today. And again, the time codes will be in the audio description if you don't have as much time as it takes me to share all this with you. All right. So another thing I wanted to say is to my Patreons, there has been a glitch. For some Patreon members, I've at least talked to 7 people who had this happen to them, where their feed stopped updating due to a bug in the system and they didn't know how to fix it. So I wanted you guys to know you're not losing your mind. And I did reach out to Patreon support 15 times over it. And I've told them to contact the people that I'm aware of with this. But what they've been saying to do is, on the most simplest scale, log fully out and log back in, or delete the app off your iPhone or Android completely, reinstall it and re-log in. And as a third case scenario, reach out to support. It's super easy to find. In fact, you can just, even without being in the Patreon, you can just Google Patreon customer support and it'll take you right to the page to enter a ticket, and they will get back to you right away with a response of some sort as they troubleshoot the problem with you. I'm so sorry about this. It's hard enough to be a creator, but to then have the technology have bugs that make people quit because they think you're not producing content or the system isn't working properly is devastating when you work as hard as I do, because you guys guys know, in 5 years, I've never missed a show. And in the Patreon, I do 3 individual shows a week, plus my YouTube content, which is all different, none overlapping. It's a lot. So anyway, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to troubleshoot that issue. And if for some reason you guys quit because you thought like the system was down or something bad was happening with me because you don't go in the chat and the DMs on Patreon, which I always answer, now you know that it was a bug and a glitch, and you're not crazy. And don't worry, I gave them hell for you. Okay, let's get into the show. So much to talk about.
Come on, bitch, let's go.
All right, so Patrick McDonald, it may surprise you, I did a confessional video about a year ago. He's a producer on, well, initially Real Housewives of Atlanta, and then he was moved over to Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. More on that in a minute. Now, there's some scandal around Patrick. He did admit in the soundbite I'm about to play for you. It's about 28 minutes. I'm going to give you the whole thing because there's a lot of tea in it, and I'm going to come in and out as needed, okay? Not all of the story he's going to present to you really adds up when you know the depth of knowledge of Patrick McDonald that I know. So I'm going to now bring you guys up to speed because some of you guys may not have seen the confessional video I did on Patrick about a year ago. This has got it all, okay? And you're going to see, without me saying too much, why potentially Bravo Andy may have helped Kelly Ripa find this gentleman a job, even though he had a cocaine and alcohol overdose after leaving her show, Fire Island, back in 2017, which was only aired for 1 season. It was on the Logo network, and it was a bunch of guys who were going to Fire Island, Andy Cohen's favorite place to party, for the summer, and we were going to follow them on their antics. Think summer house, winter house, but just all gay men, okay? So Mark Consuelos and Kelly Ripa were producing this show. I have no doubt that Andy Cohen was also guiding them, since Kelly is besties with Andy Cohen, okay, and loves Fire Island, and they share that in common. So you're going to hear Patrick McDonald own up to the fact that he had a massive overdose and became a huge addict after he was on Fire Island reality show as a cast member. And you're going to hear him acknowledge that he has this new found career in the porn industry. And he makes it sound like the network fired him or blacklisted him because he went into the porn industry. And you know, all of this, I'm listening to him talk and I'm like, oh, that's an interesting angle. But the thing is that Patrick has done this exact thing before. And I'm one of the few people who may remember this because, of course, I do the deep dive. And I did a confessional video called The Juiciest NBC Producer Scandal Ever. You can find it in the Patreon if you want to hear. And there are some things in that I'm not going to mention in the show because I don't want to ruin that awesome confessional video, which is about 45 minutes on this topic with all the other juice I found out about this. But I am going to give you a cliff note for the show today so you can really get so much more out of this 28-minute soundbite than you would have otherwise. So the first thing you need to know is that once filming of Fire Island ended, Patrick started doing gay porn back then in 2017. In fact, he proudly told Radar Online back at that time that there was a sex tape about to come out with 10 Guys and Me. And even better, it was going to be a bit of a porn spoof on his time on Fire Island. Now, he said that Kelly Ripa and Mark Consuelo mentioned to him upon the wrapping of the first season of Fire Island that they thought there could be another season that was going to happen at the Logo network. But Patrick didn't totally believe them, and he said that he heard that Kelly Ripa and Mark Consuelo's production company, which they made this project with for Logo, was going to be dissolved, and that's why he didn't believe that there would be a second season. This is going to sound very familiar because Patrick gave a quote back in 2017 to Radar Online, and he said the following: "Logo is dissolving. One of the main reasons I did the porn was to take away the power from people trying to blackmail me." Gee, that sounds familiar, because in the 28-minute soundbite I'm about to play you, he's going to tell you that he thinks Bravo, in a way, is blackballing him. Not blackmailing him, but same difference. In other words, they're going to start to hurt your career because you're doing porn, and so you have no choice but to quit and go and do something else, okay? He also is going to make it sound like he's never done porn before, really. But the truth is, Patrick did do porn before, and he did it when he was finishing up the Fire Island thing for money before he has his big drug overdose. Now listen to this quote so you can hear the similarity of this allegation, because to me, this sounds like maybe this is something Patrick does as an MO. He said, "Logo is dissolving. One of the main reasons I did the porn was to take away the power from the people trying to blackmail me," meaning Mark Consuelo and Kelly Ripa. "If there's going to be a sex tape leaked, I at least wanted to curate it," he explained, "and I got paid well for it. It was a win-win, really. It's my Christmas present to Kelly and Mark," he joked. Yeah, ruining their show. So this, my friends, begs the question, what was Kelly Ripa and Mark Consuelo blackmailing him with? And for why? One of the reasons this show tanked so badly was that there was a personal trainer who did an op-ed for The Advocate, which put in motion that the series contributed to gay America's moral decline by glamorizing behavior that negatively impacts the perception of the LGBT community. Now, Patrick McDonald got casted because at the time he was doing like property rentals or something in Fire Island, although they portray him on the show as a bartender. And he's one of the main, trouble starters on the show. Like, he calls himself the Lisa Rinna of the show. Now, after this all went down, there were several people that said that Patrick was thinking about potentially suing Kelly Ripa for not protecting him during, the reality show that he was on, and that this might have led to his spiral out of control. In addition to it, there were claims from friends of his that he was reaching out to Kelly Ripa desperately to get some support and help following the show with his addiction issue, and Kelly didn't return his phone calls. And so he was struggling to get into a rehab center and get help. And obviously the show, he alleged in a way through his friends, agitated his addictions, etc., partying on the show for the summer. And so he felt really abandoned by production emotionally and mentally after doing the show. And that's part of what made him spiral in a worse direction and do the porn, etc. He goes back home to Georgia, where he's from, and he has a complete meltdown. Sound familiar? And as you know, overdose, becomes a drug addict, blah, blah. Okay. Somehow, even before then, he had done some production stuff before he becomes a reality star. So I guess he sobers up and he decides to get a job back in production, and he does miscellaneous reality TV shows, and then he gets a break on Married with Medicine, which he does a stint on, and then he leaves Married with Medicine and he gets a job as a segment producer for Portia's Family Matters, using his back reality star lessons learned, helping him communicate with reality stars better and getting them to do what he wants, or what the showrunner wants, as you will see, manipulating them, playing games with them, which I always tell you about. Then he moved on and did Candy and the Gang, season 1, as a segment producer. He left there and went to Real Housewives of Atlanta as a field producer. He went on Winter House. He did season 2 of that as a field producer. Real Housewives of Potomac as a field producer, season 7. Vanderpump Rules, season 10, as a field producer. And then he gets elevated as a senior field producer on Real Housewives of Atlanta, season 15. And then he gets his big moment to work as a senior field producer on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, season 13. And that is when he exits stage left, with a very similar sounding story to the one that he was touting at the time about Fire Island, which had a litigious component to it, which I'm not going to get into here. Okay, so who knows? Maybe he's going to join the reality reckoning soon, right? What I never could understand or get over is how True Entertainment or Evolution was able to hire him as a predominant producer on Bravo shows, knowing that Patrick McDonald had gone after Kelly Ripa, Andy Cohen's best friend, who he must have helped Kelly Ripa a little bit on this show. I mean, as a friend at a minimum, Andy Cohen. It's just too many coincidences, right? The Fire Island component, Kelly Ripa being his good friend. Like, of course, you're going to call Andy for reality TV advice. So I almost felt like somebody threw this guy a bone. So maybe he would back off Kelly Ripa was the only thing I could think of. Because truthfully, I was like, why else would Bravo hire a guy like this who already, called Kelly Ripa a blackmailer and was threatening her legally for a while? Why would her best buddy, Andy Cohen, allow him to work for one of the reality TV show companies that he's working with as an executive producer over? I mean, unless he didn't know, but I highly doubt it. Patrick's become pretty known, over the years. He can't help himself. He is a reality star by nature. And I kind of felt like maybe Andy might have given him a job or thrown him a bone, could take the heat off Kelly, because it was going very public at the time. And now, by the way, even since the last time I covered it on my confessional video, a lot of things have been scrubbed off the internet related to this and Patrick and Fire Island in the Kelly Ripa feud. It is really hard to find stuff now, whereas before I found it very easily. So I thought I would mention that. Now, let me go ahead and play you this 28 minutes, and I'm going to intervene in between. It's important to hear the whole story, and I want you to remember what I just told you about him so you can see how you feel about it.
My name is Patrick McDonald, and for the last 5 years, I've been producing reality shows for Bravo. Most recently, I was serving as the supervising producer on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, Orange County, and Vanderpump Rules. That is until recently, when I was iced out and essentially blackballed by all my shows after I started creating adult content on subscription fan sites. Now, why would I start creating adult content? Well, I was extremely burnt out, overworked, and exhausted by the toxic work culture on a lot of the shows that I worked on. I produced 13 seasons of Bravo across 9 different shows. I'm acutely aware of the inner workings and the work culture across the board at the network. Most of these shows are working 12 plus hour days, 6 days a week, 3 to 4 months at a time. And then I would look at these people in my life who are content creators, and they are working far less than me, making a lot more money than me, doing whatever they want, whenever they want, living a life of freedom. By contrast, I started to look at how much of my life I was devoting to work, and it made me really start to question what I was doing with my life. Now, I'm not an idiot. I knew there was a chance when I started making adult content that it could jeopardize my work with Bravo. But on the other hand, it's 2025. There's Real Housewives and other Bravo reality stars with fan sites. So if someone that's a face of the network can create a fan site, certainly it shouldn't be a problem for someone who works behind the scenes, right? We're seeing guests on Watch What Happened Live being corrected when they use the word hooker and told to say sex worker. We're having adult entertainers bartending in the clubhouse. I thought, maybe it wouldn't be an issue. Maybe then I could kind of pick and choose which shows I take, evening out my work-life balance a little bit, and supplementing my income with the fan sites. I'm not sure if me being iced out was done at a network level or at a production company level, but all I know is that once I started creating this content, things went radio silent with the executive teams on my shows. I haven't heard from the exec team on Beverly Hills since we left St. Lucia, and I haven't heard from the OC exec team since we shot the last reunion, where it became abundantly clear to me that word had gotten out about my fan sites. Once I realized I was being iced out, even though I knew it was a possibility, it still hurt my feelings, to be perfectly honest. For the last 5 years, I've given so much of myself to these shows, pouring my energy, heart, and soul to telling these compelling stories, all while enduring incredibly intense pressure from a lot of my bosses. Now, you'd be hard-pressed to find someone more passionate passionate about their job at Bravo than me. I have loved Bravo and been enamored by Real Housewives ever since I saw Sheree shifting Kim Zolciak's wig out in front of Jimmy John's on Atlanta back in the day. I love these shows. I loved them then and I love them to this day. And I love them because I know how much they mean to people, because I know how much they meant to me. I was proud and honored to work on these shows, and as it turned out, I was really good at it. I came into the Bravo world in a bit of an unconventional way. Several years ago, I myself was on a reality show much like these shows called Fire Island, and I was on that show during one of the darkest periods of my life. I was battling a serious drug addiction at the time that I was keeping a secret during production. So I know what it's like to be on one of these shows while your life is crumbling around you and you're trying to just keep it together. It's a really unique position to be in, and one that's very hard to understand until you go through it yourself. Shortly after Fire Island wrapped, I was a homeless junkie, shooting up 3 to 4 times a day and was sleeping under bridges, But then I went to rehab. I got clean and I started to rebuild my life. I've been sober for about a year and a half, working 2 jobs, one at a grocery store and one cutting down trees, when I got my first offer to work on a Bravo show. I was so beyond grateful for that job because I honestly thought I'd never work in TV again. So I took it and I ran with it and gave it everything I had. I started out as a logger on Married to Medicine, and I quickly climbed the ladder from there. My next show, I got a promotion. My next show, I got a promotion. By my 4th show, I was promoted to field producer, and I was running a crew on Real Housewives of Atlanta. Within the next 2 years, I was promoted to supervising producer, working directly under the co-executive producers. And for the first time in my life, I really knew I was great at something, and that was consistently affirmed by my supervisors and the cast members that I produced. Most of the showrunners would tell me that I was one of the best field producers they'd ever worked with. Cast members who were notoriously challenging for producers in the past, requesting that I produce their scenes. I was in my element. I was killing it. I was really freaking proud of myself. For the first couple years, I think I was blinded to the toxic culture on a lot of these shows by my excitement to be there. But after a while, I started to step back and question the way these shows were being run. I could see how overworked and stressed out a lot of my colleagues were. And I would look at a lot of the gay men who were showrunners on this show and try to picture my life if I was in their position. And honestly, most of them seemed unhappy, lonely, and some of them quite miserable. Is this really what I want out of my life? Is this the trajectory I want to continue down? So time went on, and my passion for the genre started to wane as a result by how poorly cast and crew were treated at times. And for someone who loves Housewives as much as I do, I was quite shocked by how disenchanted I became. I also developed a bit of a moral dilemma on a recent season when a cast member's sexuality was at the center of a storyline. Now, I found the internal conversations about this person and what they were going through to be extremely insensitive, problematic, and quite frankly gross. A person's coming out journey, if they have one, is entirely their own. Full stop.
So this to me sounds like he's talking about Kyle Richards and the fact that she doesn't want to come out about being Morgan Wade's girlfriend on the show and keeps pushing back. Now, a lot of people think that Kyle being coy actually is disingenuous because she is coming out with a documentary that may actually include something to do with her relationship with Morgan Wade being more than just friends. And so she wants to monetize on that in her project that she's doing about Morgan Wade's music career. Now, this is all just very speculative. It's possible it won't even come up on her show, although that would get people definitely watching her docuseries on Morgan Wade that might otherwise not watch, although I don't see how that could happen because most Bravo people will watch it anyway to support Kyle. But it's possible she's being coy for that reason, and that has been going around. But Patrick feels like there were people viciously behind the scenes at the production level trying to get Kyle to admit it, talk about it, do it hard, and she wasn't willing to budge. And that's what we're getting from this.
Now, let me be clear. I'm not talking about friends of this person who are also on the show who would naturally be inquisitive and ask questions about someone's life and who they're dating. I'm talking about the entity of a TV show digging into someone's sexuality in a way that's salacious and sensationalized. That's what the internal dialogue felt like to me. Producers encouraging other cast members to ask direct questions that would put this person's sexuality on the spot just felt really invasive to me and crossed a line that I wasn't really comfortable with. I would see people at the executive level who have worked with this cast member for years seemingly very close, talked to this cast member in a seemingly compassionate way. And then when the cast member would walk away, they completely changed their tune and spoke of this person and what they were going through with such a lack of empathy and respect, even going so far as to using a gay slur, that it was truly shocking. I thought to myself, if this is how they treat this person, someone who has bled out for this show and this network in ways that most people will never know, if this is how they talk about them, they are never going to have my back. And it turns out I was right. The circumstances around that storyline were a major contributing factor to me realizing that it was time to make a change. I also want to quickly touch on Garcelle announcing her departure from the show, because I've seen some wildly negative things said about her online. I could go on for days about what a pleasure Garcelle was to work with, but if you really want to measure the character of a real housewife, ask the crew members who they like to shoot with the most. You can learn a lot about a person by the way they treat the people that they think can do nothing for them. Any morning when the crew found out that we were spending the day with Garcelle, they were ecstatic, and they most definitely do not feel that way about all of the ladies on the show. And I'm so proud of Garcelle for prioritizing her life over a television show. You know, I found many parallels between producing reality TV and producing adult content. They both offer a voyeuristic view into some of the most vulnerable and mostly unseen moments in people's lives. But I have to say that I found adult entertainment to be far less invasive than reality TV. It's interesting because most of Bravo's lives are centered around conflict, people hurting one another and then making up and then hurting one another again. And society deems that as perfectly acceptable. But God forbid you produce content about people pleasuring each other, making one another feel good. How scandalous, right? When it's more palatable for mainstream society to watch people hurt one another than it is to pleasure one another, it's no wonder the world's in the state that it's in. For me, my life has become much more balanced, more fulfilling, and far less toxic since I started working in adult entertainment. For so much of my life, I made decisions based upon what other people will think. What will my family think? What will my coworkers think? What will society think? Other people's opinions often shape so much of our decision making, and honestly, adult entertainment has been something I've been interested in doing for a long time, but I was too scared to do because of the fear of what other people might think. Man, you've got one life to live, and it's yours alone. And I've been having such a blast making this content for the past few months. I mean, working with the housewives can be fun at times, but traveling the world to film with some of the most beautiful men on the planet is also a pretty top-tier job, if you ask me. But while I am extremely proud of a lot of the work I've done with Bravo, I am just as proud of the work that I'm doing now. And let me say this, sex work is real, legitimate work, and it has been since the dawn of humanity. Shout out to all the sex workers out there who have been discriminated against, unfairly judged, or cast aside because of what they choose to do with their own bodies. Those have been villainized by many of the same people who consume the product and services that they provide. So I thank those who have endlessly battled the stigma and demanded a seat at the table, all while building an industry so massive and so profitable that it made it a safe enough space for real housewives like Denise Richards and Larsa Pippen to start creating adult content.
Well, to be fair, Larsa Pippen and Denise Richards aren't doing porn on their OnlyFans. I don't think they would like the way he's depicted that. Also, I want to say that, you know, the showrunners are Alex Baskin, Darren Ward, Mariam Jahanbin, Lucila D'Agostino, Jen McClurry, Andy Cohen, Joseph Ferraro, and there's also others that, have been involved. Christopher Cullen, Scott Dunlap, Alex Baskin, I said already. So the question really becomes, which showrunner is the one he's talking about that's kind of a douche? You're going to hear him mention it in this next part where he gets more into the production side of things and what they're doing wrong. Now, there was a whole producer Instagram dedicated to people working in reality TV in different crew positions, saying that they wanted to start posting all the wrongdoing happening on the different production companies that were exploiting all these different crew, working them long hours if they could get away with it because they weren't under union rules for particular things. And that group on Instagram that existed suddenly went bye-bye. So I guess it was, there was retaliation by the network on them for, trying to help each other know who the good guys are and the bad guys are in production. And as you guys may or may not know, I used to be a production coordinator in commercials and music videos, and I also was a production manager in commercials. And so I feel for the crew more than maybe most people, even though I was also on reality TV. But to be fair, never did porn. However, he's not telling the whole truth in this story, which is what I needed to draw your attention to. So I don't believe 100% of this. I think this has been spun to get a reaction from certain people. And I think it also has been utilized by him before, and it's a tactic to get something, I don't know from who, or to punish somebody. And so there's some really big thing behind this that is not the theme of, rights for sex workers. Aww. So let's just say, okay, I see through this bullshit, Patrick, but nice try. Now let's listen to the next part.
It occurred to me that maybe Bravo isn't even aware of some of the volatile working conditions that these producers and crew are subjected to, especially on these cast trips. On my first international cast trip, I found myself in hand-to-hand combat with a Real Housewife. There I was in my Lady Gaga t-shirt, making $1,000 a week as an associate producer, freaking like Simba and Scar with this housewife, trying to stop her from physically assaulting another cast member with a metal pole. Needless to say, these shows are stressful enough without the added pressure of an egomaniacal showrunner with incredibly unrealistic expectation. Oftentimes, the co-executive producers are left doing damage control for all the things the showrunners screw up, while also being the only ones who actually get anything done. I've always been a firm believer in trying to leave a place better than you found it. So here are a few things that I think need to change at Bravo, and just a few things that maybe need to be brought to their attention. Stop overworking your producers to the point of complete exhaustion. The amount of pressure and the expectations put on producers and crews on these cast trips are truly insane. You see, these shows aren't unionized, so there aren't protections in place to ensure that employees aren't being mistreated and overworked. Now, some shows do these trips correctly. Vanderpump Rules, for example, staggers their crews and their producers to ensure that everyone is given adequate rest. That's a testament to the showrunner and the production management on that show, the seasons that I was on it, because they actually cared about the well-being for the cast and crew. And that was reflected in the vibe of that crew. People loved working on that show because of great leadership. Winter House was another example of an executive producer who made sure that producers and crew were staggered. And that too was one of the happiest crews I worked for on my time at Bravo. On the other hand, you have showrunners that run these trips like tyrants. They expect every producer to be at the cast rooms at 8 a.m. and they will keep every producer on working until like 2 a.m. Now, if you were a general in the army, would you send every one of your soldiers to the battlefield at the same time? Of course not. Send them in waves to ensure the longevity and endurance of your army as a whole. Same thing applies here. Why would you overexert every single producer on your team unnecessarily when you could stagger them and keep everyone rested and on point for the entire battle? These trips are a battle.
Well, I think that can only be Real Housewives of Atlanta's showrunner or Real Housewives of Beverly Hills showrunner. That's the douche. So there you go. I've narrowed it down.
On a recent cast trip, myself and a group of crew members traveled 22 hours to an international location. Now, a travel day is a work day. You aren't resting, you're taking flights, you're changing planes, you're receiving gear, you're working. And God forbid you are traveling with the cast. Try being the only producer traveling with 7 housewives on an international flight. God love them, but you are not resting. It's a lot. So we arrive at the hotel after having traveled and worked for the past 22 hours straight, and we receive a text that says, "Welcome. Please drop your bags in your room and freshen up and be in the lobby within the hour for a full day of scouting." Mind you, the executive producer and many others had advanced to the location days before and got a full night's sleep that none of us had. Yet, even though we had just finished a 22-hour workday, we were expected to begin another workday without a wink of sleep. That is unacceptable and I'm pretty sure highly illegal. But on these trips, because there isn't much of a network presence, the entire cast, crew, and production team is at the mercy of one showrunner. And some of these showrunners are wilding out on these trips. The number of times I've consoled a crying segment producer in a foreign country because they couldn't find a pretty enough basket weaving biscuit shop that would meet the incredibly unreasonable expectations of the executive producer. Now, this job is not that serious, so nobody should be driven to the point of tears working on a show about screaming ladies in fancy places. Also, stop overexerting your crews. The camera and audio teams on these shows bust their asses following these cast members around, all while carrying extremely heavy equipment. So every measure should be taken to ensure that they are well taken care of. But unfortunately, there is this culture of content is king on these shows, meaning that nothing is more important than what will appear on the screen. Well, I'm sorry, but I think the health and wellness of human beings should be king. I can't tell you how many times I've popped into Video Village to be like, hey, B-Crew was supposed to break for lunch 30 minutes ago, and I'm met with we're in the middle of a scene, we'll break them when we can. All while this guy's like sipping on a Diet Coke and eating a cheese plate without even consulting the people that are holding the heavy cameras and audio bags that are making this show possible. It is a maniacal abuse of power, and it needs to come to an end immediately. I also want to specifically mention the loggers, because these people are some of the most overworked and underpaid people in the entertainment industry. These are the people who are transcribing the scene work so they can write a summary to send to the network to read what happened for the day. They're expected to be very detailed and accurate. Now, first of all, the logger position should be an associate producer position across the board. A lot of these shows will call them loggers so they can pay them less for doing the same job as an associate producer, but these people work so hard and they deserve that AP title. The loggers have to work their full 12-plus hour day, and then they have to go home and write a summary, which can take hours, especially on the cast trips when we're shooting all day. That is a lot of writing. So these loggers go back to their rooms and are sometimes up until 4 a.m. and then have to be ready to work again at 8 a.m. By the second day of the trip, they are zombies. And the worst part is that they often aren't even paid for all the extra hours that they spend writing. Can't tell you how many times a logger has complained to me that production denied their overtime requests because they didn't request it in advance. Now, how can you request something in advance when you don't know how long it's going to take you to write something? The entire hot sheet system needs to be overhauled and streamlined because as it stands, it's completely broken. I would encourage Bravo to reach out to every logger and AP on the most current seasons of all the shows and ask them if their hours worked accurately were reflected in the hours that they were paid for, because I can guarantee you that in a lot of cases, they were not. Because these shows are produced in the field by a production company and not the network, there is rarely a network presence on set, if at all. There's occasionally a network exec on cast trips, but they usually pop in for a day or two and sit at Video Village watching the monitors. They're not involved with production logistics. I would encourage Bravo to send an HR representative to location for the entire duration of these cast trips to ensure that the cast and the crew are being treated fairly, professionally, and given their adequate breaks and rest time between shoot days. Another thing I'd like to see change is let's stop telling cast members how to feel. There were so many times on my last few seasons where I'd arrive to a scene and the housewife would tell me, now I know I'm supposed to feel appreciative to her about this, but I just really don't. And I'm like, who told you you're supposed to feel that way? The executive producer. It is such a disservice not only to the cast member but also to the producer who's trying to produce an authentic scene for reality television, and also it just makes for bad TV. It's clunky, bad producing. A good producer will arrive to a scene, talk to their cast member, and find out how they feel. If the cast member doesn't know, a great producer will talk it through with them and help them figure out how they feel. A bad producer will just tell them how to feel. Several housewives on my last few seasons have been complaining that they've never been told how to feel so much. Because here's what happens. Say the producer convinces the cast member to say they feel that way. So they do it. A day or so later, the cast member gets upset in a scene, and then their true feelings come out. And now they look crazy, and the audience is left thinking, wow, what a flip-flopper, what the hell? Well, that's the producer's fault, and the cast member's left to eat it. So if you're a housewife or a cast member on one of these shows, and a producer comes in strongly pressuring you to feel a certain way, just know that that producer is producing you with an agenda, and they probably don't have your best interest at heart. Always go with your gut and stay true to your own feelings, because you can always stand on your truth, or else it'll come back to bite you, which I have seen happen on multiple shows. These people are compelling enough on their own. We don't need to be telling them how to feel. It's ruining the show, so stop.
Isn't it funny that I always say that's the biggest issue with the producers on these shows, why the early seasons are better than the later seasons is this exact reason. So I was glad he mentioned this part. And I made sure to send his videos to Andy Cohen through my Instagram.
I'd also like to say that there are so many wonderful, hardworking people that make these shows. Many of the producers, cast, crew members have become dear friends of mine over the years. I've talked to several of them since being iced out, and not one of them has told me that me making adult content made them uncomfortable. But you know what many of them have told me makes them uncomfortable? Holding a camera or an audio bag for 4 hours straight in the tropical heat without a break. That makes them uncomfortable. While there were many things that I loved about my time with Bravo, it was no longer a place for me because it wasn't conducive to a happy life. I'm no longer living to work. I guess the big lesson here for me is to never pour all of yourself into a company or an organization that will cast you aside in a heartbeat. We're here for like 2 seconds. Live your life for you and you alone. So if the content I'm making now sounds like something you might be interested in checking out, my username across all platforms is @ThickTrick1. Come find me. Let's have some fun. If my final act as a Bravo producer was bringing my smoking hot adult content creating superstar boyfriend to the Emmys as my date, where I was a nominee, I think I can live with that. And I think I can live with spending a month in Thailand celebrating his 40th birthday, which is what we're doing right now. So, bravo.
Sadly, everybody working for Bravo and everybody who's a cast member on Bravo always thinks they're super special and, falls for all the manipulation that's happening in the crew, in the cameras, the producers with the talent. And the reality is it's all a lie. No one has any value within Bravo to them. It's a money-making machine. It's all they care about is making money. And that's it. They don't care about the crew. They don't care about what you've given to the show or how bad they've made you look or how lethal their contracts are. Or really if you get sexually assaulted, unless it's caught on camera, or your mental health problems or issues. Like, come on, kids, wake up and smell the coffee. How many people are going to be rogue and tell these stories before someone in power over these productions do something about it? But, I'm not that guy. I don't have that kind of power. But certainly they're all watching the damn shows, so they should, give a shit and do something. Oh, it will be interesting when Leah McSweeney finally goes to trial, which they are going to let her do in New York, and starts to give the deposition on all the things that happened behind the scenes regarding egging her on for her drinking and making her feel like although she was suffering with addiction issues that she had to drink to keep going and all these things and the manipulation and blah, blah, blah. Well, we're going to see some awesome subpoenas and depositions on that one. And boy, the tea will be spilled much like this. We'll just have to see if finally NBC will actually have to pay the piper. I doubt it, but we can always hope. So you guys, I got sent some really interesting Real Housewives of Beverly Hills gossip. What happened was someone sent me information related to Garcelle Beauvais' house in Northridge, California. First of all, I didn't know it was in Northridge. That's so very far from Beverly Hills, and it's not even like the Valley. I mean, it is really far. So I just wanted to say that was shocking to me that she was living over there. But also what was shocking to me, and I'm going to tell you why I care in a minute, was that the house was only estimated to be worth $1,972,000. It's a 5-bedroom, 5-bathroom, 3,362 square foot house, right? And this is her main home that we see on the show. What was weird about it was there was a mortgage on the house, a conventional mortgage from 2021, $1 million, a little bit over that. Then there was another mortgage from 2019 for $373,000, which was a credit line that was taken on the house. And then there was another credit line taken on the house in 2019 for $250,000. And then there was another mortgage that I think came from when she first bought the house that was for $726,525, which was taken out in 2019. So why do I care? Well, she's actually, it would appear, taken out all the entire equity of her $2 million home in Northridge, California over the last few years. And she only stopped doing that in 2021. So that means since she booked the show pretty much, she's been not taking out equity in the property, but in the past, she took out all the equity in the property. Now, it's possible she's taken some of her salary and she's applied it to some of this debt, but they're all still active mortgages, so they're not paid off. Now, before you get too excited about this, and I am going to get into her Oxnard house too. Sutton Stracke, believe it or not, has a $5 million loan. For the full scoop, join the Dishing Drama Dana Patreon. The link is in this audio description. It's only $6 a month, and you'll get the best information and tea about the things you care about, and even the things you don't know you care about. What are you waiting for?